want to inspire you and give you motivation to change the world. Change the world. We're determined to showcase positivity in our communities. So tune in to not another hashtag show. Not another hashtag show. Not another hashtag show. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Not another hashtag show. Not another hashtag show. Not another hashtag show.
All right. Hey guys, we are here with Alexus Rhone. Alexus is writer, producer, a theologian. She is a Houston native. She graduated from Willow Ridge High School in Missouri City, Texas. She also went to University of Texas and got a degree in journalism and public relations. And then she decided to go and get her master's in theology from Fuller Theological Seminary. Alexus is the creator and founder of Unshackled Publishing. Thanks for being with us, Alexus.
Woohoo! It's a good day. How are you?
I am great. I'm great. Let's go ahead and get into it. So tell us about what you do.
Oh gosh. So, what I do is I tell stories about the resilience of Black girls and Black women. The first foray into storytelling was a book that I wrote called Premature Pleasures. And I followed that up with a full series, a coming of age story, following this amazing, beautiful Black girl and all of her coming of age forays of reflecting my own personal reverent irreverence. I'll just put it like that. And then when I went to seminary, I just took a respite from, writing and promoting and creating. And then when I graduated, I got into promoting and producing live storytelling events. I was still very much committed to the power of the narrative, but I also recognized that, there were so many different ways to tell stories. And so I formed Unshackled Publishing is what I printed my young adult series under. And then I began to produce live storytelling events. And I founded Unshackled Productions right after seminary. And probably about a year ago, I relocated from the West Coast to the East Coast. I now live in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I founded a storytelling practice called Truth Meets Story, expanding empathy one story at a time. So again, my mission is to tell stories about the resilience of Black girls and Black women, and to tell those stories on diverse platforms: page, stage, screen, web, audio, radio, and podcasts. And here also with your lovely self.
Can you tell us, I know you started out in corporate America and then you made the jump. So tell us how you got your start.
After 8 years out of college, I'm like a mid-career professional, and I am killing the game. And I thought that I was for real on my way to higher trajectory. I was going to do amazing things because this particular organization had given me an offer. And I was to start with them the first work day of the new millennium, January 2000. And so that company was Enron North America. I was convinced that my life was set. I pull into the employee parking garage. I'm driving a red convertible Mustang, Ford Mustang, but I'm flanked by dozens of silver Porsches. So, of course, they made my little Mustang like they made me feel bad about myself. But I was like, yo, it's my first day. I'm on my way to getting my silver Porsche, too. Before I go to the employee garage, I go to new hire orientation. Most new hire orientations are in the HR department for the company. But at Enron, they were at a 5-star resort around the corner from the corporate headquarters. And so for our new hire orientation, there, we get breakfast served on fine china and linen napkins and all. Like, they just for real did everything to the max. And one of the executives was greeting us and talking about how they only hire best of the best. And Forbes magazine had rated Enron the most innovative company 4 years in a row. And basically they had been vetted, was what he was saying. And then he was like, now that you're working for us, you have been vetted. And so come on in and get your gold coins and, fix your life, order yourself. It's like, you need to do what in being here with us, do what you need to do. Like your trajectory is strong. That was January of 2000. I pull into the parking garage again. My little Mustang is flanked by all of these silver Porsches. Go into the lobby. It's marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, and there's such opulence and style and all of that. And I'm like, man, I am killing the game. I have for real arrived. Get on the elevator and headed to my office. It's on the 27th floor, HR department. And as people are thinning out of the elevator, getting off of their respective floors, I notice once the crowd thins, there is a plaque on the wall of the elevator, and it reads, it's the 4 core values of Enron, 2 of which were ethics and integrity. And I will never forget that, because once I get off the elevator at the 27th floor, I go into my department, and I'm greeted by one of my new colleagues, and he's standing in the middle of the hallway, and he says, your name is Alexus, right? I'm like, yeah. He says, you are just coming over from an investment firm, and he names the investment firm. I was like, yes. And he says, well, I'm about to test your value as a recruiter. And then he says, did you bring the employee directory from the investment firm that you were with? And I said, no, because our employee directory was online. And then he thought about it for a second. He moved out of the way, and I continued on. But then I thought, and that's like proprietary information, so taking that information would be like theft. I kid you not, I turned to my right, and there is a library of corporate directories at Enron. Anytime a recruiter needed to hire someone, all they had to do was to go to the library, pull out the employee directory. They could thumb down, find the person's name, their title, their email address, their phone number, and call them and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm calling from Enron. I have this opportunity I'd like to consider you for. And I could not help but think ethics and integrity. So that's day one. That's my first day. And at that point, everything that I began to experience, I had to filter through this idea of what does it mean to work for a company that does not espouse its true, like what it says, like that it does not espouse its core values. What are my values? Am I so hungry for a silver Porsche that I'm going to, go ahead and sift through all of this? And so at some point, because I was only there for about 5 months, I had to make a decision. Do I get to live my life on my terms, or do I decide that I want to continue the corporate grind and, just kind of settle into the velvet handcuffs? And so I, within 5 months, I was talking with my then husband, and he had also just gotten like several promotions and raises. And so when I left, we were good financially. We had already lived beneath our income. And I told him what I wanted to do, had his idea for a book and for a series, actually a book series. And he's like, okay, I'm going to set you up with a laptop and I'm going to give you 1 year off. But if you don't get this book written in a year, you dusting off your resume and you going back to work. I got busy, and I've been busy ever since.
Absolutely. So real quick, tell me why it's important for people to tell their stories.
Oh, gosh. It's important for people to tell their stories, because when you don't tell it, other people tell it and they don't tell it right. It's important for everyone to tell their story, because all of us have overcome, we've more than conquered so many different things, and we've done it in so many different ways. And so what I see in your telling your story is the solution that I seek. I see in your story the different take on a solution. I see in your story that I'm not the only one out here with the solutions. That there are solutions that I offer that aren't going to reach everyone. So that's why Trina needs to share her solutions, and Ruben and Carol. And so all of us have, and the solutions are easier to receive and to digest when they're put in a story. They're also, they won't be countered. when they're in the story as well. Because when people assume that they can like counter your knowledge, they can like challenge your insights, or they can, well, no, that's not the right way to see it. Okay, let me tell you a story. Try to challenge my story. Try to challenge it. Try to challenge the way that I see it, the way I've experienced it. It ain't going to go good for you. All you need to do is to be receptive. And then I want to be receptive to your story as well. And I have found that the stories are where our easiest solutions are found. Yeah. So they're all valuable.
So storytelling is an art. We know this. You just can't get anybody up there and have them tell a story and it go great. How do you get? Because you don't use actors, you use regular people in your shows. Right?
I use actors for my plays. I don't use yes. I use actors for my plays. I produce live like true first person narratives. So yeah, so I coach people how to tell their story for the universal audience.
Right. So what's the process in that? Because I can't imagine, someone who's never been on stage before, who has a really great story. How do you get them up there and then have them, not rambled on and say things that don't need to be said? How does that process take place?
Words, practice, practice, practice. So there are 3 questions that I ask. Who am I? Am I the 12-year-old? Am I the wife? Am I the Christian minister? Am I the teacher? Who am I? First question, who am I? Second question is, who is my audience? Who am I speaking to? A group of students, a group of reluctant readers? Am I speaking to their mentors? Am I speaking to the teachers that I want to have grace for them? Am I speaking to single parents? I'm like, hey, just so you know, your wild child might just grow up to write, best-selling books and scour the earth with stories of resilience. Don't give up on your child. Like, who am I talking to? So who's my audience? That's the second question. And the third question is, how do I want them to respond? Do I want them to be gracious with themselves? Do I want them to be gracious with each other? Do I want them to give money? Do I want them to sign up for my workshop? Like what are my outcomes? Do I want them to laugh? Do I want them to remember their own stories of resilience? Like ultimately, what is it that I want them to do? So I teach them to ask those 3 questions first. And once they can answer those questions, then they can pick which story they want to tell. We've got a million stories, all of us.
So you're in Raleigh. You're producing shows and doing everything. Talk to us about your current projects right now.
In the midst of COVID, I have 5 virtual events that are coming up. 2 online storytelling workshops, 1 improvisational storytelling workshop that I'm staging as part of the Women's Theater Festival in Raleigh. And then I have 2 live performances for 2 live virtual performances, for my 1-act play, Call and Response. It's about a woman named Kathy, late 40s, African-American woman, who has heard the voice of God tell her that by the end of the year, she's going to be married. She has been given a $100,000 budget for her wedding. The only problem is that Kathy ain't dated anybody in 6 years.
I saw a play that you did. 29 years for 13 seconds. That was about a brother. Tell me about that.
Whenever I would have family come to visit me in LA, I would take them to the Homeboy Industries for lunch and to try to see if we could do a tour. Well, on one time, my mother and my 2 goddaughters were visiting, and same thing, we go to the cafe and we're waiting to be seated, and this brother turns around, he's sitting at a table, and he introduces himself. He's like, hi, I'm Vance Webster. I'm the tour guide here, tour manager at Homeboy Industries. I'd love to give y'all a tour, but I can't do it today. I'd love for y'all to come back the next day. We're like, oh, okay, perfect. So the next day we go back and he gives us the tour. And 90% of the way through the tour, I'm like, wait, you still haven't told us your story. You still go tell us your story, right? And so he kind of grins because I think he was trying to skip over that part, but we have a seat. And then he begins to tell us his story. And the story was so powerful that all of us, these 3 generations of Black women, were listening to the story and our mouths were hanging open. At the end of it, my mom says, you need to write that story. And then she points to him and she says, you need to write that story. And then she points to me and says, and my daughter is a writer. And I'm thinking, I know she did not just commit me. Like, I got my own projects and everything that I'm trying to get off of. But the more I began to think about it, I was like, wow, like I can see some interesting ways of capturing the story differently. And so I began to spend more time with him. And then there were a lot of people who were trying to tell his story. And, by the grace of God, he selected me and we were able to go from there. Well, what was interesting was, again, my mission is to tell the stories, the stories of resilience about Black girls and Black women. There were a lot of characters in his story. The ones that I focused on were the women. I focused on his mother. I focused on his baby's mother. I focused on the girl that he cheated on the baby's mother with. I focused on the woman that he married when he was in prison. So there was a way in which the sisters were not at the forefront. They weren't the central figure, but they were very much material to either his demise or his come up.
So if someone wants to get in contact with you, they want to do a project with you or to see more of your work, how would they do that?
If they go to my website, alexusrhone.com, ALEXUS, Rhone, RHONE.com, they can see all of the projects that I have coming up, or they can hit me up, info@alexusrhone.com. If they'd like to contract me to do storytelling workshops, if they would like to, contact me about being a sponsor for one of these events.
So you have made it your mission or your goal to bring our stories, Black women, Black girls, the resiliency of that, of who we are, to life. And it is something that is most definitely needed. Actually, some would even say be therapeutic, to hear these stories, to even tell them. So I want to thank you for doing this wonderful service to the Black community, because we need it, especially with everything that's going on now with Black Lives Matter and police brutality. We need to hear stories.
And you know what? And thank you for saying that. It is my privilege to walk in honor of my calling, to walk in honor and in full acknowledgement of my true life's purpose, and to also be able to be featured on like this good work that you're doing. And so thank you for this platform. To Black Lives Matter, what's interesting is one of the founders I was listening to years ago was listening to an NPR interview. And she talked about how the foundation upon which Black Lives Matter was built was on believing in the thriving of Black people. And that is the thing that often gets dismissed, is that we're all about thriving. And for all of us to thrive, number one, we have to know that there is no scarcity, there is no lack, there is hoarding. And there's a misunderstanding and a misnaming of so many different things. And so it has been interesting to watch how when we step to the mic and we correct the narratives that are told about us, that's when people begin to see, oh, wait, because now all of a sudden everyone is saying Black Lives Matter. Right. We've always known that. And I don't mock anyone, for finally getting it. That's what growth looks like. It's like, you finally get it. You didn't get it before, you get it now. Welcome. Yeah. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for giving me this platform to share the work that I'm doing. And I am grateful for this day, this time, and this season.